When I saw that sight, my heart stopped. Out in the middle of the scrubland, where there wasn't a house or a paved road for miles, a baby stroller lay abandoned on the ground, tipped on its side, with drag marks etched into the dry dirt. Beside it, a baby was crying, a weak, fading sound, his tiny face turning blue from shock and exhaustion. And just a few yards further, a woman lay unconscious, stretched out on the ground, motionless, covered in dust, completely unresponsive. In that instant, I knew, if I had been just a few seconds later, that baby would have died right there. There are days when the loneliness weighs so heavy it actually hurts your chest. I woke up before the sun came up, like I always do. The house was too quiet. Nothing but the wind whistling through the cracks in the window frame and the old creak of the floorboards when I got out of bed. I stood up, washed my face in the dented tin basin in the kitchen, drank some reheated coffee from the night before, and stepped out into the yard. The sky was still purple, with streaks of orange burning slowly on the horizon. The red dust of the ranch road clung to my worn-out boots. My name is Samuel. I'm 57 years old, and I live alone on the Santa Rita Ranch out near Marfa in West Texas. I used to be married. I used to be happy. I used to have plans. But life has a cruel way of ripping everything away from you when you least expect it. It's been 12 years since I lost my wife, Delia. 12 years since this house started feeling way too big for me. She died of a sickness that came on fast, without warning, giving me no time to get ready. One day, she was laughing in the kitchen making cornbread. The next, she was in a hospital bed, weak, fading away bit by bit. When she went, she took with her the part of me that wanted to talk, to laugh, to live the way we used to. Since then, I've learned to live in the silence. The routine here is always the same. Wake up early, check the cattle, fix fences, muck out the stalls, feed the horses. Some days I don't say a single word. I just listen to the lowing of the cows, the birds, and the wind rattling the dry brush in the yard. Every now and then I head into town to pick up supplies, but I head back quick. I don't like staying there. People look at you with pity. They ask if I'm doing okay, and I always say yes, even when I'm not. The truth is, I got used to the solitude. It became part of me, like the dirt under my fingernails or the smell of old leather on the horse's reins. I don't expect anything else from life. I just let the days pass. On that September morning, the heat was already biting before the sun had even fully cleared the horizon. The dry air burned my throat. It had been over 2 months without a drop of rain, and the ground was cracked hard as stone. The pasture was yellow and brittle. The trees were dropping their leaves early. It was a brutal drought, the kind that makes even the cattle go quiet, trying to save their energy. I saddled my horse, Thunder, an old sorrel who's been with me for nearly 15 years. He knows every inch of this ranch better than I do. I mounted up and headed toward the north side of the property, where there's a creek that still had a trickle of water left. I needed to see if the cows had managed to drink, because if that creek dried up for good, I was going to be in serious trouble. It was a long ride, nearly 2 hours on horseback, passing through empty pastures, old fences and rusted gates. I went slow, letting Thunder pick the pace. I wasn't in a hurry. I never am. As I rode, my mind wandered to the same old things. The bills piling up, the roof that needed fixing, the loneliness that felt like it had no end. I'd thought about selling the ranch a few times, just leaving, starting over somewhere else. But I always backed out, because deep down I knew it wouldn't matter where I went. The pain would follow. The sun was high by the time I reached the creek. The heat was suffocating. Sweat ran down my back, sticking my shirt to my skin. I wiped my forehead with my sleeve and looked around. A few cows were drinking slowly, lapping at the shallow puddle that remained. At least there was still water. For now. I was about to turn the horse around to head back when I spotted something strange in the distance. Out in the middle of the open field, where there wasn't a house, a road, or even a big tree, there was something dark on the ground. From a distance, it looked like a fallen branch or a piece of tarp, maybe. But something inside me said that wasn't right. I nudged Thunder and headed toward it, slow, my heart starting to pound for a reason I couldn't quite name. When I got closer, my whole body locked up. A stroller, tipped over on the ground with one wheel snapped off and drag marks in the dry dirt. The frame was bent, like it had been thrown with some force, and beside it, a baby. A tiny thing, only a few months old, lying on the red earth, crying weakly, so quiet I could barely hear it. The cry was ragged, exhausted, as if that little body was just giving up. My blood ran cold. I was off my horse before I could even think, stumbling over my own feet, heart racing. I ran to the baby, knelt in the hot dirt, and touched his tiny chest with a trembling hand. Cold. His skin was far too cold. His breathing was shallow and irregular. His lips were starting to turn blue. "No, no," I whispered, feeling desperation clawing at my throat. It was the same feeling from 12 years ago, when I held Delia's hand in the hospital and felt her life slipping through my fingers. I had seen death up close before, and there, looking at that baby on the ground, I felt like I was going to lose again. I looked around, desperate, searching for help, for anyone, for anything. That's when I saw her. A few yards away, a woman, stretched out on the ground, motionless, covered in dust, her face bruised and her dark hair matted across her eyes. Unconscious, she wasn't moving, she wasn't reacting, she wasn't calling for her son. My heart nearly stopped. I scrambled up, stumbling again, and ran to her. I grabbed her shoulders and shook her. "Hey, wake up! Your baby's right here, nothing!" Her body was limp and heavy, as if she'd been dumped there a while ago. There were bruises on her arms, scrapes on her face, dried blood at the corner of her mouth. Then I noticed something that chilled me to the bone, fresh footprints in the dirt. Tire tracks further up, like a vehicle had pulled over, backed up and sped off. This wasn't an accident. Someone had done this on purpose. I ran back to the baby. I pulled off my shirt and wrapped it around his tiny body, trying to get some warmth into him. I tucked the child against my chest, holding him gently, the way I'd seen Delia do years ago when she held a neighbor's newborn. "Hang on. Please, just hang on." The crying had almost stopped, just a faint, failing whimper. I felt tears burning in my eyes, and that's when the woman moved, a low groan, barely audible. "Ma'am!" I barked, my voice coming out hoarser than I intended. "Wake up! Your boy is right here!" She opened her eyes slowly, confused and lost. Her gaze drifted from the sky to the ground until it landed on the baby in my arms. And then she screamed, a choked, desperate scream, full of agony. She tried to bolt upright, but her body wouldn't obey. She fell back on her side, sobbing, clawing at the dirt. He dumped us here," she whispered, her voice broken. "Who?" I asked, holding the baby tight. She swallowed hard, her whole body shaking. "My ex-husband." In that instant, I understood it all. The overturned stroller, the unconscious woman, the baby left on the ground to die. This was attempted murder. There was no time for questions. The baby needed help right now. I held the child firm, patted his back gently, and tried to stimulate his breathing. 1 second, 2, 3. Then a weak cry started up again. I almost cried with him. "That's it! That's it! Stay with me!" The woman was weeping on the ground, trying to crawl toward us, her hands filthy with dirt and blood. "He said no one would believe me, said it would look like an accident, that I was crazy, that I'd just vanish and no one would look." I looked around. Open country, isolated. The perfect place for no one to hear, the perfect place to make someone disappear. I carefully placed the baby in her arms. "Can you hold him?" She nodded, clutching her son as if the world were ending, burying her face in his small body, sobbing uncontrollably. "Listen to me," I said firmly, looking her dead in the eye. "Whoever did this isn't going to give up. But you're not alone anymore." I helped the woman up. She could barely stand. Her body was weak, battered, and trembling. I carefully hoisted both of them onto the horse, her sitting in front holding the baby, and I climbed up behind them, shielding them both with my own body. I gave Thunder a nudge, and we took off. The ride back felt much longer. Every sound made me look over my shoulder. Every shadow felt like a threat. I didn't know who that man was. I didn't know if he was still nearby. I didn't know if he was coming back. But one thing I did know. As long as that woman and that baby were with me, no one was going to lay a finger on them, and it was right there, on that dirt trail, with the sun burning my neck and the dry wind hitting my face, that I felt something I hadn't felt in 12 years. Responsibility, fear, and a fierce primal urge to protect. It had been a long time since I had anyone left to lose, and I wasn't going to let that man take 2 more lives this afternoon. By the time I reached the house with them, the sun was dipping low in the west, painting the sky in shades of orange and deep red. The heat was still heavy, but the wind had shifted. It carried the scent of dry earth mixed with something that smelled like rain, far, far off. I dismounted, holding the woman by the arm. She was shaking so hard she could barely keep her feet. The baby was still in her arms, crying softly, a weak sound that cut right through me. I tied Thunder to the hitching post near the porch and pushed open the front door. "Get inside," I said, holding the old wooden door that creaked on its rusted hinges. She stepped in slowly, looking around as if she expected something terrible to happen at any moment. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. Her face was masked in dust and dried blood. Her tangled hair fell over her face. She looked like she was in her early 20s, far too thin, with her shirt torn at the shoulder and dirt stains everywhere. "Sit here." I pointed to the old chair by the kitchen table. She sat down slowly, clutching the baby to her chest like someone was going to rip the child away from her at any second. The baby's little body was still cold. I had to move fast. I ran to the bedroom and came back with a clean wool blanket, the only one I'd kept since Delia passed. I wrapped the baby carefully, trying to trap whatever heat he had left. "He's cold," I said. "We need to get him warm, fast." I put some water on the wood-burning stove to boil. The old kettle whistled after a few minutes. I prepared a bottle with some powdered milk I had in the cupboard. I couldn't even remember where it came from. Maybe a neighbor had brought it over years ago. I tested the temperature on my wrist, just like I'd seen Delia do, and handed it to the woman. "Try to get him to take this." She took the bottle with trembling hands and guided the nipple to the baby's mouth. The child sucked weakly at first, then more strongly, and began to drink. His little eyes fluttered open. The color in his lips began to return. I let out a sigh of relief. The woman started to cry again, but this time it was different. It was a sob of relief, mixed with utter despair. "He's alive. He's alive," she kept repeating, her voice thick with tears. I sat in the chair on the other side of the table and just watched them. My mind was still trying to process it all. The stroller in the middle of the field, the tire tracks. Her words, "My ex-husband dumped us here." "What's your name?" I asked, my voice raspier than I wanted. She looked up at me, brown eyes deep and hollow with fear. "Elena," she whispered. "And the baby?" "Michael. He's 4 months old." 4 months. A child that small, left on the ground to die. I felt the anger rising in my chest, hot and bitter. "How long were you out there?" I asked. She swallowed hard, clutching the baby tighter. "I don't know. When I woke up, the sun was high. I think he hit me. I don't remember clearly. I just remember being in his car, arguing, him screaming that I was worthless, that I was a bad mother, that I was going to lose Michael anyway." Her voice cracked. She took a shaky breath. "He stopped the car in the middle of nowhere, pulled me out, grabbed Michael and threw him on the ground." She began to sob harder, her voice breaking. I screamed. I ran after him. I tried to grab my son, but he shoved me so hard. I hit my head on something, and everything went black. I closed my eyes, breathing deep to keep the rage from taking over. When I woke up, he was gone. Michael was on the ground, crying. The stroller was tossed aside, and I couldn't get up. She covered her face with her free hand, sobbing. I thought we were going to die out there. I thought no one would ever find us. I got up from the chair and walked over to her, slowly. I placed a hand on her shoulder, trying to offer some comfort, even though I'd forgotten how. You're not going to die, I said firmly. You're here now. You're safe. She looked at me with eyes full of tears. But he'll come back. He always comes back. He doesn't give up. He doesn't know where you are. But he'll look. He always finds me, always. Her voice was pure panic. I realized then that this wasn't the first time. This man had done things before. This woman had fled, had tried to escape, and had never truly made it. Listen to me, I said, kneeling down to catch her eye. This place is a long way from anywhere. No one comes through here without me knowing. The nearest highway is miles away. If he comes, I'll know long before he gets here. She shook her head, still trembling. You don't know him. He's dangerous. I'm not afraid of him. I cut her off, steady and sure. And it was the truth. It had been a long time since I was afraid of anything. Because when you've lost everything, there's nothing left to fear. She stared at me for a while, as if trying to decide if she could trust me. Then she looked down at Michael, who had stopped crying and was now asleep in her arms, his breathing steady. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for not leaving us out there. I didn't know what to say. It had been so long since anyone had thanked me for anything that I'd forgotten the feeling. Rest for a bit, I said, standing up. I'm going to get some more water and fix you something to eat. She nodded, still holding the baby as if he might vanish. I stepped out onto the porch and took a deep breath. The evening air was cooler now. The sky was turning a bruised orange, with purple shadows spreading. The crickets were starting to chirp in the grass. The wind rustled the dry leaves in the yard, a low, constant sound. I looked toward the horizon, where the dirt road disappeared between the dry hills. He'll come back, I thought. Let him, searching. Her face went white. He's making everyone think he's the victim, I continued. That you ran off with the baby, that he's out of his mind with worry. She started to shake. He always does this. He always manages to convince everyone that I'm the crazy one, that I'm the problem. It doesn't matter what he's saying, I said firmly. What matters is that we have to be more careful now. No one can see you. No one can know you're here. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to bring this trouble to your door. You didn't bring anything. I chose to help. She looked at me, her eyes bloodshot. But now you're in danger too. I shrugged. I've been through worse. It wasn't a lie. I had already lost the person I loved most in this world. I had already been left alone. I had felt the pain of having nothing left to live for. Compared to that, facing down a violent man was a walk in the park. But as I organized the groceries and started on lunch, one question wouldn't leave my head. How far would Rick go to find Leanne and Mikey? And more importantly, would I be able to protect them when he got here? It was strange because, for the first time in 12 years, the house wasn't empty anymore. There was the sound of people, a baby crying, footsteps in the hallway, low conversations in the kitchen. The loneliness I had learned to carry like a familiar weight suddenly had company, and I didn't quite know how to handle it. Leanne was quiet. She spent most of her time taking care of Mikey, changing diapers, heating up bottles, rocking him to sleep. She was afraid to leave the house, even just to go out to the yard. She was always glancing at the dirt road, as if she expected to see a car appear at any moment. I understood. Her fear was real, justified. 3 days after she arrived, I woke up early as usual and went out to feed the cattle. When I came back, I found Leanne in the kitchen trying to make coffee. She had washed the dishes from the night before, tidied the shelves, and even swept the floor. You didn't have to do that, I said, taking off my old Stetson and hanging it on the peg by the door. I know, she replied, without looking at me, but I can't stand sitting still. It makes me think too much. I sat in the chair and accepted the mug of coffee she offered me. It was strong, just the way I liked it. Where'd you learn to make coffee like this? I asked. She gave a half smile. My grandmother, she used to say weak coffee was an insult to the bean. We sat in silence for a while, sipping. Mikey was sleeping in the makeshift crib I'd improved with more blankets and a thin mattress I'd found in storage. "Sam," she said, her voice low, "can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Why do you live out here all by yourself?" I paused with the mug mid-air. No one ever asked me that. The folks in town knew, so they never brought it up. "My wife passed away," I answered simply. 12 years ago. "I'm sorry. It's in the past." She kept looking at me, as if she expected me to go on. And for some reason I didn't quite understand. I did. Her name was Martha. We met young, married early, ran this ranch together for almost 20 years. She wanted kids, but it never happened for us. We tried, saw doctors, but it just wasn't in the cards. I took another sip of coffee. When she got sick, it was fast. Lung cancer. 2 months from the diagnosis to the end. I didn't have time to get ready. One day she was laughing, baking a cake in the kitchen. The next she was in a hospital bed, fading away. Leanne sat quiet, her hands wrapped around her own mug. After she was gone, I couldn't really live in this house anymore. Everything reminded me of her. The chair where she sat, the window she liked to look out of, the stove where she cooked. I tried to move on, but I couldn't. "Then why did you stay?" "Because I had nowhere else to go, and because running wasn't going to change anything. The pain follows you." She nodded slowly, understanding. "You never thought about starting over? Meeting someone else?" I shrugged. "What for? I've already lived my story. I had my time of happiness. The rest is just waiting." Waiting for what? The curtain to fall. The silence that followed was heavy. She looked at me with a sadness I didn't expect to see. "That's not living," she said softly. "That's just existing." I didn't answer, because she was right. That afternoon, the sky began to turn. Dark clouds appeared on the horizon, massive, heavy, rising fast. The wind shifted, growing stronger and colder. The animals started getting restless. Thunder was neighing in the corral. The chickens turned in early. A storm was coming. It had been more than 3 months without a decent rain. The earth was cracked, hard, thirsty. When the rain came, it was going to come with a vengeance. I went inside quickly. "Leanne, grab Mikey and get to the bedroom. We've got a bad one coming." She looked out the window, seeing the black clouds rolling in, and turned pale. "Is it dangerous?" "Could be. The roof is old. It leaks. And if lightning hits close by, it could bring down a tree." She snatched up the baby and ran to the bedroom. I locked the windows, bolted the doors, and lit the kerosene lamp because I knew it would get dark fast. And it did. In 15 minutes, day turned to night. The sky went pitch black. Heavy. The wind began to howl, battering the walls, ripping at loose shingles, snapping branches. And then the rain hit. It wasn't rain, it was a deluge. The water fell with a force I hadn't seen in years. The noise was deafening, like 1,000 drums beating at once on the tin roof. Thunder cracked the sky, making the whole house shudder. Lightning bolts lit up everything for seconds at a time, showing the violence of the storm outside. I ran to the bedroom. Leanne was sitting on the bed, clutching Mikey to her chest, trembling. The baby was crying, spooked by the noise. "It's all right," I said, trying to sound calm. "It's just a storm. It'll pass." But I wasn't so sure. The rain kept coming down, harder and harder. Water started seeping through the window frames, dripping from the leaks in the ceiling. I placed buckets under the biggest drips. The floor grew slick. The wind tore a shutter right off its hinges, slamming it hard. I rushed to close it, fighting against the wind. The rain stung my face like needles. I managed to bar the window with a piece of lumber. When I got back to the bedroom, I was soaked to the bone. "Is it going to stop?" Leanne asked, her voice shaking. "It will." But the storm showed no signs of letting up, and then came the worst of it. A bolt hit nearby, very nearby. The flash was blinding. The thunder exploded so loud it felt like the world had split in two. I felt the ground shake beneath my feet. And then I heard the sound, a loud crack breaking wood. What was that? Leanne screamed over the roar of the rain. I ran to the window and looked out. The old oak tree in the yard, the oldest one, had been hit. It had fallen right across the corral. "Damn it," I muttered. "What happened?" "Tree fell on the corral, thunder's in there." She went pale. "You aren't going out in this." But I was already moving. I grabbed an old tarp, threw it over my head and ran out into the rain. The storm was worse than it looked from inside. The rain was so thick you could barely see 15 feet ahead. The wind shoved me, nearly knocking me down. The ground had turned to mud, slick, treacherous. I reached the corral and saw the damage. The oak had crushed the fence, leaving a wide gap. Thunder was terrified, neighing loudly, trying to break out. If he got through that gap and bolted into the storm, he could get hurt bad, or worse. I stepped into the corral, fighting the wind and rain. "Easy, boy, easy!" I grabbed his halter, pulling hard, trying to soothe him. He fought me, his eyes wide with terror. Another bolt of lightning hit, even closer this time. Thunder reared up, nearly taking me down. I held on tight, using all my weight to keep him grounded. "Steady, I'm right here." Slowly, he started to calm down. I managed to lead him away from the hole in the fence to a more sheltered corner of the paddock. I hitched him to a sturdy post, far from the fallen tree. When I left the corral, I was so drenched and covered in mud, I hardly looked human. I stumbled back to the house, wrestling with the wind. Leanne was at the door, holding Mikey, her eyes wide. "Are you okay?" "Yeah." I stepped inside, dripping water everywhere. I shed the soaked tarp, the shirt clinging to my skin, my boots full of mud. "The horse?" "He's fine, safe." She let out a breath, relieved. The storm raged for another hour. Noise, wind, rain, lightning. The three of us stayed in the bedroom, waiting it out. Mikey had stopped crying, exhausted, and was sleeping in his mother's arms. Leanne was pale and shaken, but steady. And when the rain finally began to taper off, when the wind died down, and the thunder grew distant, that's when it hit me. The road. The dirt road that connected my ranch to town had turned into a quagmire. With the amount of rain that had fallen, it would take days to dry out. No one was getting through there by car, not even on a bike. We were completely cut off. If Rick tried to get here now, he wouldn't make it. But it also meant something else. If there was an emergency, if Mikey got sick, if Leanne needed help, I wouldn't be able to get them to town. I looked at Leanne, still holding her son, shivering, and I felt the weight of responsibility tighten in my chest. 2 lives depended on me now, and I was in this alone. When dawn broke, I went out to survey the damage. The ranch looked like a battlefield, branches down everywhere, shingles ripped off, fences flattened. The yard was a mess of mud and leaves. The rainwater had formed large puddles, shimmering under the sun that was now reappearing, fierce and hot. The fallen oak was still sprawled across the corral. It was going to take days to saw it up and clear it out. The road was worse than I'd imagined, completely impassable. Deep mud, full of washouts, with sections where water was still running like temporary creeks. I went back to the house and found Leanne in the kitchen making coffee. She had managed to dry some clothes near the wood stove. Mikey was sleeping peacefully. "How is it out there?" she asked. "A mess. It'll take time to fix." And the road. Washed out. 3-4 days at least. She grew quiet, processing. "So we're stuck here." "Yeah. And if he comes, he won't be able to reach us," I finished. "But if anything happens to you two, I won't be able to get out either." She bit her lip, worried. "Mikey's fine, and so am I. We're going to be okay." I wanted to believe her. But something deep in my gut told me this wasn't over yet. I spent the day fixing what I could, replaced shingles, cleared branches, cleaned the yard, repaired the window that had blown out. Leanne helped where she could, always keeping Mikey close. She swept the house, organized things, even cooked up a pot of ham and beans with cornbread that tasted better than anything I'd eaten in years. At night, we sat on the porch watching the clear sky, full of stars. The storm had washed everything clean, leaving the air lighter, fresher. The crickets were chirping loud. A soft breeze blew through. "Thank you," Leanne said suddenly. "For what?" "Everything. For finding us. For bringing us here. For looking after us during the storm." "No need to thank me." "Yes, there is. You didn't have any obligation. You could have left us there. You could have taken us to the cops. You could have done a lot of things. But you chose to protect us." I stayed quiet, looking at the sky. "I didn't have a choice," I said finally. "When I saw you two there, all alone, nearly dead, there wasn't anything else I could do." She looked at me with that gaze that made me feel uncomfortable, as if she saw something in me I didn't want seen. "You're a good man, Sam." "No, I'm not." "Yes, you are. I know bad men. I lived with one for 3 years, and you're the opposite of that." I didn't know what to say. We sat there in silence, watching the night. And for the first time in 12 years, I didn't feel completely alone. But also, for the first time in 12 years, I felt afraid. Afraid that this would end. Afraid that Rick would show up. Afraid I wouldn't be able to protect them when the time came. Because I knew, deep down, that the time was coming, and when it did, it was going to be hell to pay. The road had dried out enough for me to make it to town again. I needed more supplies, more milk for Mikey, and I wanted to see if there was any news, if anyone was looking, if the posters were still up. Leanne didn't want me to go. She was nervous all morning, pacing the kitchen, clutching Mikey. "What if something happens while you're gone?" she asked for the 3rd time. "Nothing's going to happen," I replied, checking the shotgun and leaving it loaded on the table. "You know how to use this now, and I'll be back before noon." "But—" "Leanne," I cut in, looking her in the eyes, "we're out of food. The milk ran out yesterday. I have to go." She knew I was right. She nodded slowly, but the fear was still written all over her face. "Just come back soon, please." "I will." I saddled up Thunder and set off. The road was better, but there were still muddy, treacherous patches. The sun was beating down, drying up the last of the wet spots. The heat was coming back with a vengeance. I reached Denton around 9 in the morning. The town was busy as usual. People coming and going, old trucks kicking up dust, kids running around the square. I went straight to the general store. The posters were still there, taped to poles, in shop windows, at the entrance to the market. The photo of Leanne and Mikey, with those words, "missing." My stomach did a slow roll. I went inside and bought what I needed. Powdered milk, diapers, food, medicine. The same girl at the register looked at me curiously again. "Mr. Miller, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead," I said, bagging the groceries. "This baby stuff you're buying, is it for a relative?" I stopped, looked at her. "Why do you ask?" She looked embarrassed. "It's just, I don't know. You've never bought this stuff before. I just thought maybe you have company, right?" "Yeah, company." "Oh, that's nice. You deserve some company. It's been so long you've been out on that ranch all by yourself." I paid quickly and left before she could ask anything else, but the seed of suspicion had already been planted. I stopped by the pharmacy, picked up a few more things, and was heading back to my horse when I saw it. A black pickup truck, big, with tinted windows, parked right in front of the sheriff's station. A man stepped out. Tall, well-built, wearing sunglasses and a button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Clean-cut hair, a bit of stubble. He looked around with that look of someone searching for something, or someone. My whole body went rigid. Rick. It had to be him. I stood frozen, watching from a distance. I stayed hidden behind a telephone pole. He walked into the sheriff's office and stayed there for about 10 minutes. When he came out, he was talking to a deputy. They shook hands, and the deputy scribbled something in a small notebook. Rodrigo got into his black pickup and drove off slowly, cruising through town, scanning the streets, the shops, the faces. Searching. I waited until he was out of sight. Then I swung onto Thunder and made my way out of town as fast as I could without drawing attention. My heart was thumping against my ribs. My palms were slick against the reins. He was here, in town, looking for them. How long until he started hitting the ranches on the outskirts? How long until someone mentioned the lone rancher who'd been buying baby supplies? I reached the house in a near gallop. Eleanor was on the porch, waiting. When she saw me, relief washed over her face. Thank God. I jumped off the horse and went straight inside, carrying the groceries. "What is it?" she asked, seeing my expression. "Did something happen?" I slammed the bags onto the table and took a deep breath. "He's in town." Her face went pale as a ghost. "What?" "I saw him, leaving the sheriff's office. He was talking to a deputy, driving around, looking." She began to shake, gripping the edge of the table to keep her balance. "He found me. He found me." "No, he doesn't know you're here. He's just scouting. But he'll find out. He always finds out." "He won't," I said firmly, grabbing her by the shoulders. "You're hidden here. No one has seen you. No one knows. What if someone saw you buying things for Leo? What if someone got suspicious?" I didn't have an answer for that. "We need to be careful," I said. "More careful than ever. You can't leave the house, not even for the yard. You have to stay out of sight." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "And if he comes here?" "If he comes here," I replied, grabbing my shotgun, "I'll handle it." The next 2 days were pure tension. I barely slept. I spent the nights on the porch, sitting in my chair, eyes glued to the road. Every sound made me reach for the 12-gauge. Every shadow looked like a threat. Elena wasn't sleeping either. She stayed in the room with Leo, always alert, always terrified. She had lost weight. Her eyes were sunken, exhausted. The fear was eating her alive. On the 3rd day, it happened. It was mid-afternoon. The sun was high and blistering. I was at the corral fixing a fence post when I heard it. A car engine. Coming up the dirt road, I dropped my tools and ran to the house. "Elena, someone's coming!" She appeared at the door, ghostly pale and trembling. "Is it him?" "I don't know. Get to the bedroom, lock the door, stay quiet." She scooped up Leo and ran. I grabbed the shotgun, racked a shell, and stepped out onto the porch. The black pickup appeared around the bend, kicking up a cloud of dust. Rodrigo. He pulled up in front of the house, cut the engine, and climbed out slowly. He took off his sunglasses and looked around with that calculating look of someone sizing up a property. I stood my ground on the porch, holding the shotgun, waiting. He approached, smiling. A fake, practiced smile. "Good afternoon," he said, his voice deep and overly polite. "Are you the owner of this place?" "I am." "Pleasure. Name's Rodrigo. I'm looking for my wife and son. They went missing a few days ago, and I'm hitting the local ranches asking if anyone's seen anything." He pulled a paper from his pocket. It was a flyer with Elena and Leo's picture. "Have you seen this woman around here?" I looked at the paper, then back at him. "No." He studied me, the smile still on his face, but his eyes were cold and sharp. "Are you sure? She might have stopped by for help, or water, or... Haven't seen a soul." "I see." He folded the paper slowly, still staring at me. "It's just... Someone in town mentioned you'd been buying baby stuff, formula, diapers. I found it curious, considering you've lived out here alone for years. I felt my blood run cold, but I kept my voice steady. My niece is visiting with her kid, staying for a few days." "Oh, really?" His smile widened. "That's good. Family is important, isn't it?" "It is. And where is she?" "Your niece. I'd love to say hello." "She's resting. The baby's sick, running a fever." He took a step forward. "That's a shame.